We're now in the EX7 project in the Java 8 folder in my live lessons repository. And we're going to take a look at yet another example that illustrates various Java functional programming features. This particular example shows how Java functional interfaces, including Supplier, which is built in modern Java, as well as a custom functional interface that we'll define, can be used in conjunction with Java constructor references for constructors that have either 0 parameters or 3 parameters. And this will illustrate a bunch of interesting points. So here is the main entry point into the EX7 example. As you can see, it's going to call 3 methods: 0 param constructor ref, 0 param constructor ref EX, and 3 param constructor ref. And each of these will do different things. Let's go ahead and start with 0 param constructor ref. This particular method is going to demonstrate how the Java Supplier functional interface can be used as a factory for 0 parameter constructor references. This is kind of the normal way of dealing with suppliers and default constructor references. So let's take a look and see how it works. First thing it does is it prints off that it's the 0 param constructor ref example, and then it goes ahead and it makes a local variable called factory of type supplier. And supplier, as you probably know, is a functional interface, and we parameterize that with a class we implemented called CRDemo for constructor reference demo. And then we assign this local variable factory to a constructor reference for the 0 parameter constructor for CRDemo. And we'll go take a look at that in just a second. Once we have done this, we then use the get method, which is the method that's defined on a supplier, to go ahead and make a new instance of the CRDemo object. So that's how suppliers work. One of the ways you can use suppliers is to make objects. And in this case, we go ahead and make a CRDemo object, because that's what we instantiated the factory local variable with. And then we turn around and we call CRDemo run. So let's go take a quick look at what CRDemo is. This particular class implements the runnable interface and overrides its run hook method to print a string field. You can see here we have a field called mString. We have a default constructor that assigns that field to the value hello. We have a 3 parameter constructor that we'll talk about shortly that takes a string, an integer, and a long, and essentially combines them together to assign the value of mString. And then finally, we have the run hook method that overrides the run method from the runnable interface. And what this method does when it's called is it just prints out the current value of mString. So that's what CRDemo does. And we'll see what happens when we run this. In fact, I ran this program before, and you can see that the thing that happens when we call 0 param constructor ref is it prints off hello. So that's the first example. You can see here we're just using this supplier to store a constructor reference to the no parameter CRDemo constructor, and then we call the get method. It makes an instance of that. Well, you might ask yourself, why is this any better than just using a constructor directly? Why do we need to have a constructor reference? So let's take a look at an example that will make that a little bit more clear. So this example is called 0 param constructor ref EX for the extended version. And this will demonstrate how we can have multiple supplier objects that can be used as factories for multiple 0 parameter constructor references. And this will hopefully make it a little bit more clear where supplier comes in and why it's very useful. So first thing we do is print off the name of this method, and then we come along, we make 2 local variables that are factories. We have one that's called CRDemo factory, and then we have one that's called CRDemo factory EX for extended. And this one is the same as the one that we had up here. It just is assigned the constructor reference for the 0 parameter CRDemo constructor to a local variable called CRDemo factory. And then we have another constructor reference, which is CRDemo EX, which we'll look at in a moment. And then we assign that to yet another local variable called CRDemo factory EX. And that is a supplier that creates CRDemo EX objects. So let's just take a quick look at what a CRDemo EX is. It also implements runnable, has a string, initially assigns the value hello in the constructor, but then its run method will uppercase mString before printing. So it's a little different from the other one, from CRDemo. And now what we're going to do is we've got ourselves 2 suppliers, And note these suppliers are really unrelated to each other than the fact that they both implement runnable. And we go ahead and call this generic helper method called run demo. And we pass in Sierra Demo Factory, and we also pass in Sierra Demo Factory EX. If you come down here and look at what run demo does, as you can see what it does is it's a generic method, generic static method. It's parameterized by type T, which implements runnable, or extends runnable in this case. And it's passed a supplier of T. And so what we do is we say factory.get, which makes us the appropriate object, in this case, either the Sierra Demo or Sierra Demo EX object. And after that's been created with the get call on the supplier parameter, we then call the run hook method. And what'll happen here, of course, if we look at the results, is when we call the first implementation, which is the one that's doing Sierra Demo Factory, that's Sierra Demo's implementation, that prints out lowercase hello. And then when we call the second call to run demo, that will use the Sierra Demo EX constructor to make ourselves an object whose run hook method will uppercase hello before it gets printed out. So that's what we're doing there. So again, just kind of demonstrating how we can have multiple suppliers that can hold different ways of creating different kinds of objects based on what they're parameterized with. Okay, so that's that example. The third and final example here is the 3-param constructor reference, or constructor ref method. And after printing out the name as a debugging tool, we then go ahead and make ourselves a new local variable called factory, except this time, this is of a custom functional interface that we defined. And here's what that functional interface looks like. This is try-factory. Try-factory is a functional interface, and this functional interface accepts 3 generic parameters of types P1, P2, and P3, and then it produces a result of type R. So you can see we have the of method, which is the one and only abstract method that's defined here in try-factory, and we've got the 3 different parameters. So how are we going to do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves a local variable called factory of type try-factory, and it's going to take a string, an integer, and a long, and it's going to create a Sierra demo. Well, as luck would have it, we actually have a constructor for Sierra demo that takes a string, an integer, and a long, and of course creates a Sierra demo object. And so if we look back, what we're doing here, we're actually using the constructor reference for Sierra demo : new, but because the Java compiler is really smart, it can deduce which constructor we're referring to here. And so what we're referring to, of course, is that 3-parameter constructor, the one that we see here. So that's what's going to be used to manufacture the object. And so we then use this by saying factory.of, because that was the method that was defined down here in the interface. And then we pass in 3 parameters. We pass in a string, which says the answer is. We pass in an integer that's the value 4, and a long that's the value 2. And then we go ahead and after we create the try-factory object, we go ahead and call the run method on this, because of course we're actually producing a Sierra demo object. That's what of is actually producing by calling this constructor, the one that's defined right here. So that's going to concatenate those various parameters together. And then when run gets called, it's going to print the result out as we see here. And lo and behold, when you take a look at what happens when we actually run this thing, you can see it prints out the answer is 42, because it takes the string, the answer is space, prints it out, and then it goes ahead and puts a 4 followed by a 2. So it's not actually 42, the number, it's 4 followed by 2. So this example is kind of interesting because it shows how powerful constructor references can be in modern Java. It shows how we can use constructor references for both 0-parameter constructors, like for suppliers, as we saw here for the first 2 example methods. And then we can also see how we can use the concept of a constructor reference for a custom functional interface that takes multiple parameters to its constructor. So hopefully you found this interesting.